welcome back everyone to the final series of day one of the European Summer Championship.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Raven, joined of course by Subtle, partner in crime, at the moment at least. And we have a really great series to finish off the day, in my opinion at least. We've got DrHippi versus Likeaßawse, and a true sort of clash of personalities, I would say.
Oh yeah, I mean, different backgrounds. You know, DrHippi is the experienced player here. You know, he has major experience. He has HCT experience, having been to a championship before. Likeaßawse, not quite on that level, but he does have the entire Greek community on his back, as we will find out a little bit later. Has a ton of support back in his home country. But yeah, personality-wise, chalk and cheese. The quiet, softly spoken, very sparing with his words, DrHippi, up against the absolute bundle of energy that is Likeaßawse.
Yeah, and we've seen that over the past couple of days as well, just hanging out with the players. Likeaßawse is just always in the middle of conversation, always wants to talk about the game or even just general stuff, and he's just, you know, always the center, I would say, whereas DrHippi likes to just chill on the edge a little bit and just get involved when he feels it warrants his attention, I guess.
And what is super interesting to me is that both of the players have identified that personality clash, and both of them have privately expressed to us they have intentions to exploit that. You know, DrHippi is going to try and slow the game down. As you see a picture, that is Likeaßawse's girlfriend and or fiance and or wife, not quite sure where they stand, and child, who he says is a huge inspiration for him, says that she brings him the good luck that he needs to play Hearthstone. So he's going to be relying on some support in spirit from his girlfriend and daughter. But to finish the thought, DrHippi says that he's going to try and slow the game down. There may be a lot of roping here. There may be a lot of,
Turn one
full
roping.
75-second turns, whereas you saw in DrHippi's interview there, his media piece, where he said he's a little bit scared of Likeaßawse's emotions. He doesn't really know how he quite react to that, and I think Likeaßawse identified that and says he's going to try and play up the whole, emotional side of the game. So there is a serious clash of styles here, both on and off the game board.
Yeah, and we are starting with game one, Likeaßawse versus DrHippi. It's going to be Likeaßawse's Zoo versus DrHippi's Rogue as well. So this is a quite an old matchup if you take it all the way back. Two of the sort of longest standing Hearthstone decks in terms of overall style. Obviously, a few changes once we've had some expansions in Standard, for example, but still, the theory is almost the same.
Yeah, and I spoke at some length with Likeaßawse about his lineup, and he said that Zoo was a deck that he felt like he had to bring as the fifth deck, but he didn't really trust it. He wanted to find something better, but he couldn't to fit with his lineup strategy, so he ended up with Zoo as a default fifth deck. So it's interesting here that the deck that he probably feels least secure in is what he's leading out with.
Yeah, maybe just wants to try and just cash in on the early win, get it out the way, forget about it, and then move on with the rest of the decks he's very comfortable with. But I also know that DrHippi, known by far for his Freeze Mage play, his second most played class is Rogue.
Yes.
Like, he does not mess around with Rogue either. It's, I would say it's just below his Freeze Mage play games.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of an old school list here from DrHippi. He's playing a list that was popularized by Stan Sifka and my Complexity teammate Super JJ, who kind of came up with this one Argent Squire idea in Miracle Rogue, because they generally just don't have anything to do on turn one a lot of the time. It's a spot that's been supplanted by Swashbuckler recently in a lot of decks, but DrHippi going with this old school Argent Squire, and the old school flavor is something that echoes throughout a lot of his deck lists. He's playing old school Token Druid, for example, as well, not bringing the more up-to-date Malagos version. But as I went on that extended story about DrHippi's deck lineup, you can see there is absolutely no action from Hippie's side of the board right now on turn one, and his decision is backstab a Flame Imp, play an Argent Squire, or none of the above.
Yeah, so I was talking to DrHippi yesterday, and he told me about this strategy, and I was like, oh, so you're going to rope a bit, and he was like, no, I am going to rope every single turn, and I know it will annoy him. It's like, okay, well, interesting to see, but he does have a pretty good turn. He can choose to backstab the Imp if he wants to, but it looked like he wants to hold on for that. He has multiple options next turn of just coining out SI, and so far DrHippi's hand is looking pretty good, and like you said, this sort of old school approach seems to be working out so far, just being able to get the Squire down early on.
Yeah, Voidwalker here, really nice response to the Argent Squire. Important pickup for Likeaßawse that turn. If he'd have just had the Abusive Sergeant as his turn, it would have looked a little bit miserable. So the 1-3 to wall out the 1-1 from making any efficient trades here is definitely a really big deal. But DrHippi, for his most part, has a pretty strong opening against Zoo, honestly. He got that one Squire, and he also has access to the Coin SI7 agent play, which is such a huge swing early against a Zoo deck.
Yeah, and especially because we can see the follow-up as well. You know, the natural progression of how this game may well play out is Likeaßawse plays Gang Boss on 3, because it's a pretty good 3-drop. And then DrHippi just has the opportunity to just sap, because he'll be ahead on board, and then just build on that. And a lot of the time, Zoo can't really come back from that if Rogue's ahead this early on.
Yeah, I mean, definitely breaking up the backstab SI7 agent combination here, and using the coin, which is a tool that can be useful as the game goes on. It's not an automatic decision, but because of that line that you just elucidated with the sap on the 3-drop, which is the primary target, right? Sometimes there's Sea Giants, and sometimes sapping a Doomguard is okay, but the Doomguard's just going to come straight back at you the next turn. So the 3-drops are quite often the premium sap targets in the deck.
Yeah, and it's going to be really difficult for Likeaßawse, and we see this rope strategy, more importantly, playing out. And I'm going to, probably more so, excuse me, than any matchup we've seen, I'm going to watch the player cams just a little bit more as well, just to see who is getting to who more, because DrHippi looks pretty chill, whereas Likeaßawse looks not, I was going to say more focused than normal. I don't mean that as in terms of, an insult, but more sort of relaxed than you would normally feel. Probably because he's on the, back end of a rough match so far.
And again, I'm sure DrHippi is going to consider his options here, but now is the time that he can just turn the switch on the Zoo deck and put Zoo in that position that they do not want to be in, which is having to consider defensive plays. And he can do that right now. Sap, trade the 3-3 into the 1-2, jam a Cold Blood onto his Argent Squire, and just start getting in there.
Yeah, because Zoo doesn't really have a good way to just deal the 1 damage outside of a Peddler into a coil. So,
right. What are they going to do? Soulfire your 1 health Argent Squire?
The health is completely insignificant, especially compared to the fact it's gaining the damage off the Cold Blood. So, not too much of a surprise to see this turn. You just fill it out as much as possible. He's probably going to have the mana to dagger up and start being able to use that to leverage the advantage as well going forward. So, Likeaßawse definitely not having a great time of it at the moment. And I just really love the sap on the 3-drop. It just cements the advantage Hippie's gained so far.
It does so many things for him here. Like, not only does it, start putting on the pressure to Zoo's life total, where, Zoo's life total is one of their biggest vulnerabilities. You can really pressure that heavily, but it also creates the situation where if Gang Boss was to come down again, you just automatically have an amazing trade on the board with the 5-1 into it, so you can just maintain pressure that way. Sap number 2 being picked up is so huge here for Hippie, because now that's the 1 turn he needs. He can sap the 2-4, he can double trade with the dagger and the 3-2 into the Argent Squire, and then from there he's just curving into Drake perfectly.
And we can see as well from Likeaßawse's hand, it's going to ruin him. Because then if he has to play Doomguard, well, that's 1 minion. He can only attack 1 of his opponent's minions with that. He'll still have 1 left. And then he'll discard an Argust and the Imp Gang Boss. Like, horrible minions to discard, because they're actually going to be MVPs in this matchup going forward.
Absolutely.
But he's also pressured enough, as you said, on the life total, that I feel like you kind of just have to Doomguard.
Yeah, the power of this new Zoo deck is that with the addition of Malchezaar's Imp being able to, draw cards for each card that you discard, you essentially cycle through your deck to the power cards more often, because Zoo is a deck where in the mid game, some of your cards are just significantly more powerful than others. Your Doomguards, your Soulfires, your Darkshire Councilmans, your Defenders of Argus, this is what you really want to pick up. What you don't want is the situation where you draw the other way around and your Doomguard just ends up discarding those power cards for you.
The old school Doomguard plays that actually just causes more trouble sometimes. But we'd see the Flame Imp pretty pointless as a draw for Likeaßawse. He could choose to go with the Gang Boss and the Flame Imp, but 1, that's 3 more damage. So that'd be 11 guaranteed sort of damage across both turns. And also, it just doesn't really gain too much. It's just too slow, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't... It puts a 3 health Taunt on the board, even if he goes with the Argus play, like Flame Imp into Argus, which just doesn't do anything. The 3-1 just trades directly into it, so... Yep, the Doomguard line seems to be the only line that makes any sense, but this is just a free Azure Drake turn for DrHippi here. He's just nailed down as much early game tempo as he needs, and he can just happily make this easily trade up for him on the board, 3-1 into the remainders of the Doomguard, and just continue to curve out.
Yeah, and also at this point, the outs for Likeaßawse are very, very small, right? Because DrHippi knows it's an Imp Gang Boss in hand, so he knows there's no chance of like a Soulfire into Silverware Golems or something like that, you know, to have any chance to just battle back onto the board. And he knows that's not going to happen at this point. So, you know, DrHippi's just, as you said, just continuing to be in a great position, and he's probably, for the rest of the game, going to stay 1 minion ahead.
Yeah, and this is the position you want to be in against Zoo. If you create board tension against Zoo, they can almost always break that in their favor. They're the deck that plays all the buffs, all the combat tricks, you know, all the power pumpers that they need to just make more favorable trades than you can possibly cope with. But if you're able to get ahead of them, just have more minions on the board, that is a huge benefit. And if that number of minions is any number against 0, then they are in a mess.
Yeah, this is looking pretty horrible for Likeaßawse. He's just playing whatever he can, but as I said, Hippie's just value of his hand, even though he can't guarantee to gadget Zan into prep and cycle a big turn, he doesn't even need to particularly. He could just play Tomb Pillager, clear the 2-1 and dagger up again. You know, it's a completely valid turn, and then use the coins if the Tomb Pillager dies to then have a much better gadget Zan turn after, if he doesn't just already finish the game by then.
Yep. I mean, I definitely like dagger down the 2-1. Tomb Pillager seems like a given. The only question is where you send the Drake, and I personally would love to see this Drake going downtown. I want to put my opponent to 11 right now and just really start ramping up the pressure.
Because Likeaßawse is at a point where he has to tap to try and keep up in terms of the board, and if he keeps tapping and you just go aggressive, he will just die. That's normally how life tap works when you have 2 health, so I really like the pressure. And also, what are the punishes from leaving Ink Gambos up versus trading? Like, are there that many?
And it would have to be something plus Argus. Like, Argus would be necessary to ramp up the health so it could pick up a value trade, and then he would need additional power on top of that. Okay. That changes many, many things.
Yes. Doomguard, when you have only 2 cards other in hand, and one of them Silverware Golem, feels pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it might not be enough. It probably won't. You know, DrHippie's got so secure with his early game here, and he has just a strong Gadgetzan turn available to him in the future. But this is the kind of draw that Likeaßawse needed. You know, just drawing regular vanilla Zoo minions was not going to get the job done. He needed to do something above and beyond, and you know, the Silverware Golem discard synergy is pretty much the strongest thing you can do in this build of Zoo.
Exactly. It was probably the only draw or combination of draws that was going to give him any chance at this point in the game. But even with that, DrHippie still has Gadgetzan, prep, and then potentially a not prep coin in that order, of course, but you know, potentially a coin to play around with as well, depending on how the turn plays out. And he's actually going to wait and just, I guess, just play the Silverware Golem out and trade into the Drake.
I won't say I'm a huge fan of this play. Whenever you're spending mana on Silverware Golem, I tend to think something has gone wrong, but I understand that the Drake is a huge threat, and just leaving that up on board, you know, because if you Doomguard, you probably want to like Doomguard into the healthy minion to leave the smaller minion available that doesn't pick up. You know, you don't want the Tomb Pillager just to get a free trade into your 3/3, for example. So I can understand like the threat of the Drake, leaving it around there is a big deal, but I feel like you needed that big swing turn to at least have any hope in this game.
Yeah. So do you now, as DrHippie, consider actually just Tomb Pillager into Van Cleef and continue to go? Because the prep, you know, is actually... DrHippie's gone very heavy on minions this game. He's not really drawn too many spells at all, so the odds on the prep side kind of spell is pretty high. But you could just guarantee a wider board versus Zoo with only a 3/3 to, you know, like, you know, try and even threaten your board. And one of those is a Silverware Golem that you saw from hand as opposed to being pulled out. So there's one less card yet again that can create a big swing turn.
Yeah, completely agree. There's no need to do anything fancy just yet. Just keep developing the board, keep yourself ahead, and now when these Tomb Pillagers just die through natural causes, when they eventually will, you're able to start your Gadgetzan turn then. But for now, just continue dominating the board. And yeah, I think this is a wise pickup from Likeaßawse, just taking the Voodoo Doctor over the Malchezaar's Imp, because you know you have to actually discard cards from the Malchezaar's Imp to be able to draw more. So it actually wouldn't have done anything for him in that situation.
Yep, I can imagine the post-mortem of the Tomb Pillagers. Yes, he died of natural causes. Yeah. Okay, so the Doomguard does actually just clear off the Tomb Pillager there, and now Gadgetzan, 2 coins, prep. I mean, DrHippie's going to have a whale of a turn this time.
He is, and this time he is not roping. He understands he is not going to put himself in the position where he has to react late to a Gadgetzan turn.
The thing I'm getting out of this is DrHippie just lied to me.
Yeah.
He told me he's going to rope every turn.
Those were his words.
Okay.
I personally am disappointed.
As am I. I thought we'd get more time to chat. But, you know, DrHippie just ruined it. But we'll see this Gadgetzan turn as he goes into the Farseer and their sides. Oh my god, so many options now.
I mean, he's got a board clear. Shadow Strike, SI7, dagger down the 2-1, just back in complete dominance, and that's if a more appealing option doesn't appear off the Gadgetzan cycle, which it doesn't. So I'm sure we're going to see the SI7 come down here. And again, just since, what, turn 3, the Rogue has been ahead on this board, and it just hasn't even looked like the Zoo.
And also as well, you know, the health advantage is big as it is, and then a Farseer comes down to, you know, it doesn't sound like a lot being 3 health, but, you know, it can make a huge difference actually. And there is going to be the first game, and DrHippi takes a very convincing win versus Likeaßawse's Warlock. So struggled with that one overall, but we'll be back shortly with the next game of this series. So stick around, guys.
How is the Hearthstone community like in Greece? Is it big, or are there a lot of passionate players?
Yeah, they're all passionate. Like, we're screaming to each other like in a LAN tournament, and someone is top decking, there's going to be a fight. There's going to be a fight, man.
What would it mean for the entire Greek Hearthstone community if a Greek player like yourself won the Europe Championship?
I can show you in my phone how many messages I have. Like, everyone is telling me you need to win this. They're already organizing, like, I don't know, some group ups in net cafes or in their home to watch the games.
Does that motivate you, or does that make you feel a lot of pressure?
I don't know. I want to win it, but if I don't, guys, chill.
Do you think that Greek Hearthstone is going to be a big thing in the future, especially with you qualifying for a championship?
Yeah, every month there are like at least 4 to 5 Greeks people in the top 100. So I think that's good. Yeah, we have too many good players. They just need something more.
There we see the two things that Likeaßawse is actually playing for right now. One, his daughter, and the other hand, the championship itself. So everything to play for Likeaßawse.
Yeah, and as we saw in the media piece there's a third thing. He really is carrying the weight of expectations of the Greek Hearthstone scene on his back, and he is very much, you know, a community leader in that scene. He was showing me earlier yesterday that he's actually coded an app that's basically just like a Greek Hearthstone hub that consolidates all the streams in the same place and does news and tournament results and all that kind of stuff. So he is really looked up to as a figure in the Greek scene. So there's definitely a third factor at play here. He has a lot of things motivating him to try and move forward to BlizzCon here, but there is a stony-faced opponent blocking his path right now in DrHippi, who has his own motivations in making his way to BlizzCon.
Yeah, as we go into Game 2, DrHippi is 1-0 up versus Likeaßawse, and it is going to be DrHippi's Druid versus Likeaßawse's Hunter. So I actually think this matchup is pretty good for the Hunter. I think you can just pressure them out so fast that Druid is now slowed down to such an extent that if Hunter curves one, as we can see, 1-2 at least so far for Likeaßawse, you can just overpower them. The removal is not fast enough combined with the death rattles of the Hunter.
Yeah, the death rattles are a huge deal because, classically, everyone looked at Druid and said Druid is a class that struggles to remove minions. That's not quite the case anymore because they're playing very, very spell-heavy, removal-heavy decks these days, but still, they don't interact well with sticky death rattle minions, of which there aren't too many removing in the game since Naxxramas rotated out, but the one class that does still have access to them, Kindly Grandmother, Infested Wolf, Savannah Highmane, it's almost become the identity of the Hunter class to be the death rattle class.
And also that, combined with the other removal weakness for Druid, is wide boards.
Yeah.
Like, they can probably deal with one minion, even, you can probably deal with a Cairn, like, reasonably okay, but when a board goes like that wide of death rattles, it just becomes way too much to deal with. But see, Hippie is running the Ancient of Wars in this list and the mulch, but he's got to get there. I think that's the key issue here. He's got to get to the late game and not just be dead to hero powers or any burns such as Kill Command, because I feel like when you play against Druid, you can be aggressive, and then even if the big taunts come up and you don't have cards like Deadly Shot or anything to actually just remove them, you can actually just keep hitting hero power and try not to die. And that actually works quite often versus Druid.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's one Deadly Shot in the Hunter list, so that's a potential answer to a huge wall. And DrHippi right now just staring at Innovate, no persistent ramp up until that Maya Keeper, but he may just be considering how early he wants to get that Maya Keeper out right now. But I was going to say, I think first and foremost, just address this Fiery Bat, because you don't want the state of the board to spiral out of control with beasts. You kind of want to answer them on a one-for-one basis as long as you can, up until turn 4, just to make sure that big Houndmaster blowout doesn't come down as long as you can. So if there isn't a big pressure turn coming out here from Likeaßawse, then DrHippi will probably just go ahead and innovate his Maya Keeper on turn 2, having now dealt with the problem of that initial Fiery Bat, and that's a pretty nice curve into the second Maya Keeper now.
Yeah, I was just about to say, actually, like, getting the Maya Keeper out turn 1 wouldn't achieve anything, especially against the Fiery Bat, right? The ramp doesn't ramp you into anything that DrHippi had available. Yeah. But now, as you said, it's going to curve out really well for him, so he's going to be able to boost his mana up enough to try and get ahead of the Hunter. But Likeaßawse does have a pretty decent follow-up as well. He can just drop the Squire in the following turn, and Tracking is a card we were discussing earlier today in this list. It's just so powerful in the fact you pretty much choose a win condition towards the late game.
Yeah, it's just Tracking has become an auto-include in basically every Hunter deck I play since Call of the Wild was released, because Call of the Wild is just such an insanely high power level card that you just want to draw it every game. Other cards be damned, I just want Call of the Wild on turn 8. That has to happen. So Tracking increases your consistency of being able to do that so much that it becomes such a big deal to have that card in your deck.
Ooh. Barnes seems good in time for turn 4.
The Abusive seems really good right now, though. It is a huge tempo turn if he just takes Abusive Sergeant right now, and his turn 4 can just be Houndmaster anyway if he dominates the board now. I think I like the Abusive a little bit more that turn.
It's really tough decision, to be honest, because I would always lean towards Barnes. I feel like the card in this deck is that powerful because of so many death rattles, and let's be honest, if you Barnes out a Highmane, you probably just won the game off the back of that to a large extent. And also there were just way more minions as well to get off Barnes that feel pretty good. But as you said, the option was pretty likely, as it would have forced removal on the second half of the Grandmother, or Houndmaster comes down, as you said. So merit to the both. I always lean towards Barnes, but it wouldn't have been particularly an issue if he didn't go for it.
She chooses here to trade into the 3-3 preemptively, which does give up a lot more power on his board. It also makes it significantly easier for DrHippi to sweep his board of beasts on this turn and deny the Houndmaster, but I guess if your line was to pick up Barnes as an alternate 4-mana play, you're not too concerned about your Houndmaster just yet, but still a little unusual with that turn. I personally would have liked the abusive line a little bit more, and then not quite sure what his thinking was after that with the preemptive trade, but DrHippi now has a decision to make himself about whether he wants to try and deny turn 4 Houndmaster at pretty significant cost to himself, to his own development, or whether he just goes ahead and continues ramping up with the Mire Keepers.
Yeah, I think the idea here was that if there was hero power into Wrath, he can clear whilst leaving the Mire Keeper up if he doesn't trade.
Sure.
So now he can't do that, right? So, you know, it's still it's a bit
really
wonky. It's a stretch.
Scenario to be playing
It is a stretch, but as you said, he did choose Barnes from tracking, which means he wasn't all in on having to play Houndmaster.
Sure.
Although now I like Houndmaster, of course. You get the value from that card whenever you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And Likeaßawse looks like his thinking in this matchup is that he's very much prepared to go to the late game here, because again, it looks like he's gonna, not risk being punished here and pick up the trade preemptively. Definitely seems what it looks like he's considering here. Of course, if he was to go face, he can get punished by things like Swipe, Feral Rage, even Wrath plus Hero Power is a lot more effective. Although the trade exposes him to Swipe just as much, honestly.
I was just gonna say, I think even looking at his hand, I would be more aggressive at this point, because his hand is, Animal Companion, Barnes, Squire, right, all really great cards, but if he just like whiffs the next turn, then suddenly it's just not looking as great to take it to the late game if the Druid stabilizes. But the trade is always going to happen, right? So I would just rather go face here. Get that 4 damage.
Well, I mean, is the trade always going to happen? That's the question. Because if he was scared of Wrath last turn, if that's the world that you're saying we're living in, then he has to equally be scared of Wrath this turn, right? Because Wrath plus Hero Power then clears out his entire board.
Yeah, I guess so. Because he didn't see Wrath last turn, but it wasn't a great turn to Wrath because
I
of the
guess
trade.
if he trades, then you just Wrath the 4-3 and Hero Power the 4-1 anyway, so it's much the same thing. So actually, I think there is very little punish to go face in that situation. So I think Likeaßawse ended up with the right decision in that turn.
Wow, and we can see DrHippi now has actually 2 Ancient of Wars in hand,
Yeah.
and only 1 turn away from being able to play the first one. So this is looking actually, pretty rough. I think if I was Likeaßawse, I'd like to have done a bit more damage by now. To be able to pressure him there, but DrHippi's done a pretty good job of negating that, getting that early Mire Keeper out. I think was really strong. Really strong here.
So I have a question: how many good mulch targets are there actually in a Hunter deck?
Not many.
There's not many, right?
No, I'm trying to think. I'm like,
you're not mulching a high main and feeling great about it. You're not mulching like infested wolves. Call of the Wild mulch is going to be too slow. So yeah, I love seeing the mulch come out here. And what this means is that he's now using his 3/3. He has his 3/3 consolidated on the board. So this 3/3 can now defend his Ancient of War turn and give that Ancient of War maximum chance of sticking to the board. So yeah, I really like this play from DrHippi.
Now we see what Barnes is going to bring onto the board, and infested wolf, reasonable.
Definitely not bad. And the 3/3 is going to end up not having a big impact here, but back-to-back Ancient of Wars is going to make a huge dent in Likeaßawse's pressure here. He's going to have to fight through this pretty much the hard way, unless he gets some significant help from Animal Companion on the next turn.
Yeah, and also just to rewind a little bit, the mulch did give Eternal Sentinel, which as a hunter is not what you're looking for. You want anything of high value because you lack card draw, so you want every single card you're going to get into your hand to have some form of greater impact than a 3/2 for 2 mana. So it was pretty unfortunate with the mulch, I'd say there.
Strictly worse than Bloodfen Raptor.
Yes, unless is there any way? No, there's no way. There's no way for Hunter to overload, right?
I'm sure in a game where Yogg-Saron exists, we could invent a way. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the Argent Horse Rider in hand as well is going to help do some damage, but at the moment there just needs to be a kill command. Call the Wild, great card, but not enough. So we banking on Huffer?
So yeah, Leok would add 3 and allow him to only push his 8, but now the Horse Rider, it's actually probably a better outcome than Huffer, because he gets to keep the large body of the Animal Companion itself in play, whereas if it was Huffer, the Huffer would be trading in itself. So yeah, I think Leok is actually the best option here.
Yeah, and now Likeaßawse hopes against hope that there's no swipe, as that would lock out this board pretty rough, but fortunate for him, DrHippi has just drawn into Fandral, and not a lot to really combo with Fandral this turn, and by not a lot I mean actually nothing, because he can't play Ancient of War as well, so it also feels kind of bad to just Ancient of War on a board this big, even though it looks quite unthreatening.
It's awkward,
it kind
right?
of does a lot of damage, you know, out of nowhere.
I don't mind just dropping Fandral here. You know, Fandral and being able to hero power as well this turn almost contests the board just as well as the 5/10 does, and then you have the potential for the 10/10 Ancient of War next turn if in Miracle World Fandral sticks, and then plus you get another hero power alongside the 7-drop next turn as well. So you're weaving in just those 2 extra little increments of value over the 2 turns.
Yeah, I completely agree actually, because Fandral will be if you kill the Leok, then the Hunter's 1 damage off killing it just based off minions, and Hunter like Unleash, which he only runs 1 of in the list, you know, to actually cleanly kill it, or if not that, then Burn, and you're following up with Ancient of War, right? So any burn used on Fandral is kind of a bit of a win for you in general.
Yep, quick shot, very important draw
perfect.
for Likeaßawse to be able to clear through this. And again, the Leok perseveres here. He's able to stick the Animal Companion on the board. And there's the
tactics.
first emote from Likeaßawse. I think you will hear a little bit more about Likeaßawse's stance on emote usage in Hearthstone as we progress through this series. But he is definitely a subscriber to the tactical side of emotes, as you said, which is something that I remember Hoy writing an extensive article on after he made his breakout performance in Via Game about, you know, actually using emotes to bring your opponent out of the mindset that they're locked into on any given turn.
Yeah, and let's be honest, you know, a lot of players like, you know, you shouldn't emote, it's disrespectful, or, you know, BM, but like Likeaßawse is like one of the nicest guys I've ever met. But also you use the tools available in the game to your advantage. If that's what you want to do, there's completely nothing wrong with it. And DrHippi is going to go for the swipe into the Fandral, and at this moment in time, the Wild Growth will probably be the decision following up, or because of this Call of the Wild, do you think has Hippie played enough spells for Yogg to be good enough?
Likeaßawse says, thank you for that perfect trade. And as if to answer your question, Alexander Bagley, he has played 5 spells this game.
Oh, Arcane Giant. I love the card, and it has the additional joy of counting spells for us.
It is pretty useful, yeah. It counts the exact number of spells for you until it gets down to 0, at which point your number of spells is enough.
Yeah, good. It's like, it'll do. So now the problem is, though, there's the fear of if you just play Giant and Wild Growth, well, Wild Growth and Giant in the probably the correct order there, you're going to just fear the second call of the Wild, because there aren't enough spells for Yogg to get work done. You know, let's be honest, 5 is just not really enough.
No.
But, you know, the swing of a second call is extremely scary, so I actually don't mind DrHippi playing this. And Hippie actually told me yesterday that he likes Yogg because they're always good. So I said, right, we're casting your game tomorrow, we'll see. And so far, okay.
That is so ambitious, and he actually nourished for mana here, so he's actually able to now cycle through that Wild Growth if he wants to, and discount, and that is
5
absurd.
was enough, and there's Hippie, not normally showing too much emotion on camera, but he cannot help himself, and you know what? It's very scary when someone tells you my Yoggs are always good. First Yogg, good. On 5 spells. Oof. It's totally speechless. Can everyone just take a note? This is the first time in my history of knowing you that you're speechless.
What just happened? That was 5 spells. All right, so Wild Growth available can reduce the cost of his Arcane Giant, but not by enough to fit in the Violet Teacher as well, I believe, right? So we'll go down to 5, so he'll be 1 mana short. So, yep, just going to cycle it out first. Living Roots is a nice pickup here, allows to clear out the 4/3 off the board, allows him to push 7 face and develop a fresh 8/8 alongside this board. So all of a sudden, from a precipice situation, he is now set up lethal.
Yeah, and we said from the beginning, Hunter overruns the Druid, but now with no minions on the board, 1 card per turn, and this kind of power on the other side, this game's pretty rough. I mean, he called the Wild, best card he could have drawn. Is it enough? Probably not.
It's enough for now, but in the long term, it begs another question, but it speaks very much to the power of Call of the Wild as a card that we're even considering whether that 1 draw is enough to have brought him back into this game now, because he was so far behind up until this point.
I mean, any other card would just be game, right? There's literally no other card I don't think he could have drawn, especially because he only had 1 left in the deck. So, like a boss having a chance at coming back into this game after that pretty powerful Yogg from DrHippi.
Is Likeaßawse considering hitting face here? I mean, is
think it's
that the
reasonable.
necessary play, actually, to
played
give yourself a
no
chance?
No kill commands and 1 quick shot. So, quick
Yeah,
shot
I like
into kill
this.
command. Well, just kill command if Leok survives.
Right.
Oh no, because he'll hero power.
Well, never mind. He played to his outs. Like I definitely don't mind this line. Of course, you know, basically any removal spell was lethal there with the line he took, but I don't think he wins the long-term trading game ever. You know, it seems like a 0% line to go down the trading game from there, but he takes the aggressive push, tries to set up an out for him off the top of his deck, but any removal spell and Wrath was good enough, and DrHippi, the experienced veteran of these proceedings, is going out to a healthy lead.
Yeah, he's definitely not roping the turns, which is a bit of a surprise in itself, very quickly becoming the scariest character in Hearthstone.
A man after my own heart. I don't think I can add anything to increase the brilliance of that interview. DrHippi is just my hero.
Yeah, it's such a great character overall, and you know, on Virtus Pro joined because of another champion who's Naaman, and you know, another exceptional player, and the fact that DrHippi's returned, you know, again, he is back here for the 2nd time, and it's such an impressive feat considering it's the qualification again through prelims, battling through that huge bracket, and then into the top 8 all over again. And he's been proving why he's doing it. You know, he's 2-0 up versus Likeaßawse, his first opponent in this top 8, and he's looking pretty steady so far.
Yeah, of course, Naaman was the player who you know, snatched his dreams away from him originally. You know, defeated him in grand finals, but you know, instead of salt and misery coming out of that, a friendship was born, and you know, they ended up joining the same team. And DrHippi says that one of his big motivations to go to BlizzCon is to compete against Naaman again on the biggest possible stage.
Yeah, there is nothing bigger for these players, and it's going to be Game 3 beginning now. It's DrHippi's Mage, which is not Freeze, versus Likeaßawse's Zoo that we saw earlier on. So what is this Mage list, and what is DrHippi doing? Has he queued the wrong one, Sol?
Unfortunately, I'm not sure if we can say he's queued the wrong Mage deck. He's just put the wrong cards in his Mage deck. He is, unfortunately, to my great disappointment, is playing double Kabbalist Tome Tempo Mage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Come over to the dark side.
You actually sat and played some ladder with him with this deck, right? With the Tempo Mage, and found out some interesting facts about DrHippi.
So, you know, completely known for his Freeze Mage play, of course. Everyone knows this. And I asked him, so, you know, is this the first time you've taken Freeze Mage to a tournament? And he said, sorry, not taken Freeze Mage to a tournament. And he said, yep, first time ever in any tournament he's not brought Freeze Mage. It's like, okay, so how much of this list have you played? Not really any. I've just brought it because I didn't feel like Freeze Mage was the right fit. And yeah, this looked like the best list to bring, so I'm doing it. And I said, so when was the last time you played Tempo? Yeah, back in Naxxramas days, or at least the Mad Scientist days. I was like, good luck, DrHippi. Yeah. Good luck.
There is a fine line between genius and insanity, and this decision rides on that line exactly, because I mentioned in the previous series that we cast together that I feel like this has been a kind of a meta dictated by the presence of Freeze Mage in the meta on 2 of the strongest players. DrHippi, George C, both expected to bring Freeze Mage to this tournament. So the genius level of this decision is that DrHippi has swerved everyone. And I asked Likeaßawse specifically, you were prepared for Freeze Mage, right? He said, yeah, 100% thought he was bringing Freeze Mage. So he has, you know, at least swerved everyone in that regard, but how wise is the decision to bring a deck that you have so little experience with?
You know, we're going to find out, and we mentioned this earlier, where I think, you know, DrHippi is an exceptional player. There is no questions there. Mechanically, he's very good. Is he good enough to pilot?
Oh!
Wow. Stop right there. That was just smoke missiles, all to face. The Voidwalker just chilling.
Likeaßawse does, you know, rock back in his seat. He gets the slightly sad news that his Voidwalker is going to bite the dust anyway, but for a second there, he was living in dream world as he thought his 1-3 was going to survive. He had the abusive Sergeant in hand, which would have been able to come out and pick up a tempo trade on the board, so that would have been a huge deal, and Likeaßawse is now going to cycle one of these cards out with the Soulfire, just reduce some of this pressure on board right now, and holding on to the Knife Juggler here is a big deal, because he's still going to be behind on this board next turn, and could very, very possibly need some strong knives from the Knife Juggler to be able to take out the 3-1 Mana Worm. Yeah,
it was kind of interesting, the Soulfire on the Apprentice. So the Sorcerers can cause havoc in this list, right? You know, you can really, with reduction of spells by 1, cause absolute havoc, but your opponent's got 1 card, goes into 2 in hand. There's what, like actual Arcane Intellect you're afraid of after seeing Arcane Missiles and Arcane Blast. So,
yes,
you know, maybe the Mana Worm was the target, because that's going to start stacking up.
No, I almost all of the time prioritize Sorcerer's Apprentice over everything else. Flamewaker is the king. That thing has to die. But after that, Sorcerer's Apprentice is next on the list. Like, even over Cult Sorcerer most of the time, unless there is, like, a particularly insane Arcane Blast target on the board that you have to get rid of the spell damage for, because...
And before Mana Worm never dies.
I mean,
that's just like 18 damage.
It's possible, I agree, but, you know, as you said, you can look at it from the other perspective and say, you know, your opponent is out of cards. He's had to play a really inefficient turn 2 because of the Arcane Missiles outcome, so don't give them the opportunity to, you know, tempo back into the game by drawing cards cheaply and then, you know, picking up more spells that they can use. You know, just try and wall them out as much as you can. This is almost becoming an attrition game for the Zoo now.
Yep, and it looks like the Mana Worm will not live too long. There's already the trade from the Flamewaker. So as he said, Flamewaker, like, #1 sort of priority card overall in this Mage deck, and it's going to die to the Imp Gang Boss. But what this does, the trade actually has a chance of keeping the Mana Worm alive for another turn as well. But, like you said, holding on to Juggler, it's going to be a big deal depending on where this first Juggler goes.
I'm not sure I like this sequencing.
Why was... Okay, so that seems a little bit off. The extra damage for the Imp Gang Boss was insignificant because you're going to trade it into the Flamewaker anyway.
Right.
And the juggle from the 1/1 Imp had a, like, there was a chance with the juggle just hits the Flamewaker and then the 1 damage is wasted.
So, what I will say, if you hit your first juggle onto the 2/2 Flamewaker and it then becomes a 2/1 Flamewaker, you can then continue to develop minions, and you then have 2 targets on the board, right? That you have a 66% chance to shoot a 1 health minion, which is valid. So it's pretty close, but as you said, I mean, your prophecy is coming to fruition right now. That Mana Worm has seen things. It is still here kicking around, and it's probably going to be forced to pick up a trade here because DrHippi's hand, after starting very aggressively, has fizzled out here, as the deck tends to do when you build it this heavily. So he has had to very quickly switch himself to a control game now.
Yeah, and you know, he does have the tools going forward for that as well. The Likeaßawse is out of cards. Obviously, he's a Warlock, so he can just tap into extra cards anyway. But DrHippi can go into Emperor this turn if he feels like it, because the trades would require the 4/3 and the 2/1 to go into it, so it clears a good chunk of the board anyway. And then follow up with the Paul as well, which is actually a big swing card in itself.
Yeah, Firelands Portal could potentially be huge here on the follow-up if he's able to get a good defensive outcome. And, you know, in this situation, good defensive outcomes include things like Doomguard, because that's just, yeah, it's a 2-for-1 removal spell, essentially, right? So if he's able to pick up, you know, a nice Taunt minion, which there are a good number of from Firelands Portal, or a Charge minion that can, you know, 2-for-1 on removal immediately, then that could be a big swing, especially since he'll be able to drop it alongside Cult Sorcerer to try and pick up some additional tempo on the next turn, so...
Yeah, I just like the Emperor here. I mean, that there's a chance there's Fireball into Ping is considered just to clear up as much of the board as possible, but I feel like playing the Emperor kind of does that job for you.
Yeah, it's very, very possible that the Emperor picks up a 2-for-1 trade anyway. This deck, you know, he's already seen an abusive. I think was Direwolf discarded? Is that the card that was discarded off the Soulfire initially? I don't quite remember, but you know, he's seen some buffs being used already. Of course, Argus as well is already on the board, so there's a lot of potential buffs out the window. And he doesn't play Power Overwhelming in the list, so that's, you know, one of the biggest tools out the window.
Yeah, that opens up for the trade-ups that Zoo is normally known for. Maybe he used to be known for now, because it's all about the cycle with the discard mechanic. And DrHippi now draws into the Azure Drake, so opens up the chance to play that plus Ping. But I still feel like it's either Emperor or Firelands. I don't know. Could Firelands onto the 1/3 just to remove that as a threat?
Oh, for the sake of 1 power, you kill the Imp, surely.
Yeah.
I definitely disagree with this one. Nexus Champion Sarad is a tool that, if it survives, is going to be a big deal, but it's not going to survive because there are both options in hand now for Likeaßawse. The Soulfire is going to get discarded, and yeah, for the difference of 1 power between such a huge tool in the Malchezaar's Imp and the Defender of Argus, I'm not sure if I can get on board with DrHippi's decision there.
Yeah, it's what we were talking about earlier. You know, they're the chances. It's like the Sorcerer's Apprentice. They're the chances that allow the Zoo to get back in the game if you feel ahead or continue to push. And yeah, we got an Argent Squire from it, so we got a 1/1 Divine Shield from that Imp staying alive versus the 1 damage that you know, he would have took extra, but he'll just take the damage from the Squire now.
Yeah, and now the Tempo Mage is so far behind in this matchup now. It's not a matter that can be redeemed, you know, just by a couple of 1-for-1 removal spells. And this list, it's running 1 Firelands Portal as its 7-mana removal tool that we just seen used, and 0 copies of Flame Strike, 0 large-scale AoE at all. So he's going to need probably some Kabbalist Tome miracles to fight his way back into this game.
Yeah, there's also, because he has the Cult Sorcerer, there is an Arcane Explosion in the list
That's
as
true.
well. So that's one of the sort of snapbacks he can draw just to be able to reset the board, especially because the Doomguard is at the moment on 2 health. So, you know, there is something he can do there with just a lot of spell power and a big Arcane Explosion. Might be enough, but there's only 1. So he has to draw it first.
Yeah, he does have the Drake to cycle an additional card, and yeah, with the amount of spell damage he has available to him, I mean, I'm sure...
And the Thanos is going to draw too.
Yeah, the Thanos is going to draw, so I'm sure it's going to go down and not remain as spell damage here, but he has 2 spell damage minions in his hand, so his capability to just sweep this board next turn. There are 2 3-health minions, and the rest are less than that, so if Arcane Explosion is drawn here, this is going to be huge!
Okay.
DrHippi is a man destined for BlizzCon. I am calling it now.
Oh, he even has intellect.
He definitely does have intellect.
He does have intellect in the card sense and the general sense as well. And Arcane Explosion, the 1 card, I believe, in the deck, other than, you know, Arcane Explosion from a Kabbalist Tome, would have been enough to at least just secure it. And now, like a boss, is on the back foot out of nowhere. Another Drake, Frostbolt, 1-mana Cult Sorcerer. DrHippi pretty much has everything he needs to finish this game up.
And that draw is so huge because we both feel if there's going to be a weak point, if there's something holding DrHippi, who is one of the favorites in this tournament, if there's something holding him back from taking his seat at BlizzCon, it's this Tempo Mage decision, right? It's can you pilot this deck at this level without that much experience? And I mean... That Arcane Explosion draw sure does help patch over some cracks.
Yeah, 100%. And now, you know, DrHippi's taking his time to really think about it. As you said, if he closes this game out, he's only 1 game away from closing the series out, and also gets the Tempo Mage out of the way. But he has so many options. The second intellect as well. These Drakes and Arcane Intellects have done so much work in keeping him in the game. And never mind, he doesn't need to think about any of that. As when you draw into Frostbolt that do 5 damage, you're looking pretty nice.
Yeah, when you are chilling with that much spell damage in your hand, it does not take a lot to burst down Zoo, and DrHippi here goes to the hill. Likeaßawse is going to have to draw inspiration from anywhere he can. The trophy, his daughter, the Greek community, he needs all of it right now.
Likeaßawse has been on one hell of a journey so far, and he's going to really need to dig deep and get some inspiration from his family to be able to claw his way back into this series, as that last game was... I mean, I'm glad we just had a moment there to just calm down, because that was crazy.
It was. Yeah, Likeaßawse mentioned that he feels like his daughter brings him good luck in Hearthstone. So I'm wondering, after that last game in particular, whether DrHippi has a daughter somewhere that he doesn't know about that's bringing him good luck. It's possible.
It's going to be a very strange good luck charm. I don't recommend this for everyone.
No.
Definitely something just to consider, though. But yeah, the series overall is looking a little bit rough, and DrHippi, on the back of some very fortunate moments, has managed to go up 3-0 so far. And as we mentioned just before we had a minute there, the Tempo Mage is gone. So that was the worrying deck, and we were all realistically worried about. As I said, when I was sat with him, he told me just not played the deck that much before, even at all. It's like, you're a brave man. You're a brave man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to discredit him at all. He's an amazing player, and 66% of his wins have come off his back. But he was just dead that game without that Arcane Explosion draw. So it was huge, and it is a skill-based video game, believe it or not. But sometimes, if you are going to make the big push, you do need that little bit of luck in the right place, and that's exactly what he picked up.
Yep, 100%. And it looks like DrHippi has his Warrior left as well, which is a bit of a different one, which feels strange to say compared to the rest of the Warrior list we've seen at the moment. It's going to be good old-fashioned Dragon Warrior.
Yeah, what kind of crazy meta are we playing in this tournament where good old-fashioned hit-you-in-the-face Dragon Warrior is the breath of fresh air as far as the Warrior decks go?
A very strange one is my answer.
Yeah.
But the first deck Likeaßawse has chosen to go up against this warrior is going to be his Hunter. And I know I'm pretty sure Likeaßawse does quite enjoy Hunter as a class. I was talking to him quite a lot about it yesterday in terms of just different builds, different slight styles, variations. So I feel like he's going with a comfort pick at least, because he has to win every single game versus this Dragon Warrior to be able to take the series.
He absolutely does, and this is a matchup that there's quite a lot of disagreement on, honestly, as to who's favored. You know, sometimes you get that annoying answer of, well, if the warrior gets Fiery War Axe, they're favored. It's like, no, that's just not how matchups work.
Yeah.
Like, on average, who's favored? But it really is a snowbally matchup, right?
Yes.
It comes down to who grabs the board early. And with Likeaßawse's particular list, where he has the extra, you know, Argent Squire plus Abusive Sergeant package in there as well, he probably has more tools to be able to do that early than the Dragon Warrior does, that plays, you know, a lot of, you know, fairly clunky mid to late game minions. But having said that, DrHippi has a pretty quick draw of his own available to him.
Yeah, and I think Hippie as well has the Twilight Guardian, which is one of the breakers in this match, because I think that it's so awkward for the Hunter to deal with that 6 health. It's never clean with just a kill command. It really requires Deadly Shot, if you have it, to just keep up the tempo and keep pushing. Or you have to just commit like a minion plus kill command, sorry, or a minion plus quick shot, and then that really slows down your turn.
Yeah, sure does. But for now, Likeaßawse is curving out ahead of his opponent here, so DrHippi will need to play catch-up, and he doesn't have that Fiery War Axe to be able to do it. He does have Ravaging Ghoul available to him, and I think this choice of development here is, you know, somewhat with Ravaging Ghoul in mind, because you can see that Ravaging Ghoul will punish his 2-1. So the choice here between the Grandmother and the Huge Toad, this means that he keeps a 3-2 on board after the Ravaging Ghoul as opposed to a 3-1.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good so far, and it's if DrHippi even chooses to play the Ghoul.
Yeah, I don't think this is the time
I was going
for
to say, because now he has a few more options. I mean, I definitely don't think the frothing is a good idea a lot of the time, but the monkey seems okay here.
Yeah, Monkey and Frothing essentially do a similar job in this situation, so it's kind of which do you value more later. And DrHippi actually is going to play the Ravaging Ghoul here just to immediately contest, but just going back to the point, it's about which do you value later. Do you want to keep the Frothing so you can make an aggressive push later, or do you want to keep the Fierce Monkey so that you can be defensive later and potentially, you know, Hunter, we talked about the power level of Call of the Wild specifically before, but because that card is so powerful, it also makes them quite linear going into turn 8, because you know that's the only thing you're scared of happening, right? Call of the Wild. So sometimes having specifically a taunt minion, you can make their play even more linear by saying, right, this is where your Huffer has to go. It has
just
no
line it up
option.
perfectly, yeah. And that's why a lot of the time, you know, we saw it in one of the previous games with Likeaßawse. If you can force a setup before Call of the Wild with minions that are probably going to stick, then you definitely go for it, given the right situation. And we just saw then Likeaßawse trading into the Ghoul, which is pretty much what he wants to do, because he did draw the second Toad. But as we said earlier, this is a snowball matchup, so you do trade. A lot of times as Hunter, you just be aggressive and let your opponent go into you. But you do definitely trade here to be able to keep head on the board, because if Warrior sticks on the board, normally the minions are just bigger than yours, so it's a real problem. Ooh, whiff.
And that's a bad Barnes.
Okay, Toad, you've got some work to do.
Huge Toad, it's all on you, buddy.
Oh.
Nope. Yeah, he could have chosen to go Animal Companion there instead of Barnes and given himself the extra 33% outcome from Leok to be able to trade up effectively, but probably not worth it in the long run. That is pretty much the bottom tier of outcomes he could have had from his his 2 checks that turn. First the Barnes check and then the 50-50 on the Huge Toad. Just about as bad as it could have gone.
Yeah, and also as well, just the sheer playing off curve when he has Animal Companion plus Toad next turn. You know, it's a pretty good follow-up, and now we see this sort of the worry of the Twilight Guardian coming down now, and suddenly the board's starting to just spiral a little bit out of control for Likeaßawse.
Certainly is, and like you said, that 3-6 is just such a big deal.
It's so awkward.
Such an annoying minion for them to deal with, not only in this mid-game period, but it's also just amazing for exactly that late-game Call of the Wild situation, right? You just play a 3-6 into their Call of the Wild turn. It's like, oh, well, my 5-2 Huffer is kind of sad right now. Yep.
The Leok doing some good work, though, means he can clear off the Twilight Guardian this turn. And, don't really care about the Monkey at 3-1 compared to the 6 health of the Twilight Guardian.
Yeah, for sure. And he absolutely deserves that outcome after the last,
Everything went wrong.
That evens out a little bit, you know, what happened on the last turn where he got, you know, a bad outcome from his Barnes and then missed on the huge toe 50-50 as well. So Leox serving out some sweet, sweet animal companion justice there. And allowing him to trade into that annoying 3-6 that we were talking about. But DrHippi has, you know, secured the early game here. He's navigated the early game turns at least. He's still a little bit behind on the board, but having now drawn Curator as well, his ability to go late with this Dragon Warrior deck is so huge.
Exactly, yeah. Like a boss at this point, it's generally around turn 5 or 6 as Hunter that you really have to start thinking about what resources you have available, because it's normally not a lot, and work out how to get the most out of them, because as we can see, the Warriors just already got way more cards, and as you mentioned, Curator only helps. It's only going to refill and cause even more problems, and pretty much Like a Boss is going to want either a Tracking or a Call the Wild coming up soon. Maybe even a High Main will be enough, because he currently is ahead on board, so a High Main would help cement that. But other than that, every other draw in his deck would feel a bit lackluster.
Sure. I think that was a perfect sequencing of attacks there from Likeaßawse as well. There's no need to fully respect the Drake. This is probably the only deck in Hearthstone that plays Azure Drake that you don't have to respect Azure Drake to actually be like a destructive source of spell damage. So he didn't need to kill it. But if he'd have just sent both of his attacks face, then the Drake comes back into the Leok, and then suddenly your Kindly Grandmother only has 1 power, so it can't complete that trade. It can't force it to happen in the end. So I like his decision to do the halfway play here, make sure that if that Drake trades into anything on this board, it's just going down immediately, and also just maximize his pressure on the board for the next turn.
Yeah, now, you know, it's looking like a boss does have a good amount of minions on board. The Unleash not really going to do too much work, maybe depending on where this Toad goes. But the Fiery Bite,
just not what he needs.
It's not enough. No, like we said, it's just not going to be enough. He might be okay for 1 more turn, and he can allow himself 1 more draw. But you know, if he continues to whiff this hard, it's, you know, DrHippi's just going to outvalue him at this point.
Yeah, he absolutely is. The one thing that's worth saying about DrHippi's list is that he doesn't play Deathwing, which is a pretty recent, I mean, not recent, but it's a later development in the Dragon Warrior list after it was being refined. So if Like a Boss can kind of keep this wide board built up against the Dragon Warrior, it's hard for them to deal with, especially after he's used one of his Ravaging Ghouls already early on in the game.
His only.
Oh, you're totally right. Yeah, you're totally right.
He has used his Ravaging Ghoul.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, that's it's a real tough one, and you know, suddenly these 1 health minions are, you know, just about enough to stick to the board at the moment. But I just like Curator because there literally needs to be a burn draw or a Call of the Wild to deal with it efficiently.
I don't hate double frothing. It potentially trades down this entire board anyway if you can put the fear into your opponent to be able to do it. I think that gives you the best platform to be able to fight back from long term. It's just as weak to Call of the Wild, but you cannot beat a Call of the Wild draw here.
Animal Companion's not terrible though. Toughest, that's what, 6, 9, 13. All face. You've seen a ghoul. The Frothings are not going to ridiculously buff this turn and then, you know, smack them back for 27. I just like all face here. You need to end this game soon.
Sounds like a plan.
Yes.
Let's do it. Send it all downtown. It looks like that's what's happening. And as you said, the 1 Ravaging Ghoul, these lists are revealed. So Like a Boss will know that the 1 Ghoul is the only Ghoul in the deck and that it's already been used. So he knows not only is this board more likely to stick because the Ravaging Ghoul is there, but also the threat of double frothing is not a real threat because it's not going to get out of control in just 1 turn.
Yep. Now DrHippi has what's potentially the last turn of this game to consider how he wants to try and combat this threat from Like a Boss. But, you know, there are still so many cards he could draw now. He's still got some burn. Quick Shot, for example, would be kind of brutal here, as it would be his only card, so he can cycle as well as dealing 3 damage. And, you know, there's still the hero power, just pretty much negating the hero power of the warrior here as well. So it's going to be a tough one at this point. I think Curate is just the play.
It's the only play. Yeah, he does get himself Sir Finley as well off of this. Hasn't drawn it yet, so he will get the full 3-card package here. But it's a question of whether he wants it on this board, because it's valuable as a 1/3 in this situation. But if he doesn't pick up Priest, for example, as a replacement, then suddenly the hero power clock just gets even faster.
There it is.
Never mind.
Like a Boss, look at the relief. Woof. I mean, Like a Boss was ahead for pretty much all game there, But the second you run out of juice as Hunter and you know your opponent's got so many cards available, that can snowball backwards very quickly. But the quick shot was enough to finish the game regardless of the taunt, and Like a Boss is beginning his comeback attempt.
He certainly is, and he was, like you said, he was ahead that game, but he was ahead on a tightrope. If that Animal Companion draw was another whiff, if that was Argent Squire, say, then suddenly he would have been in a world of pain, and still there was the possibility, if there was a couple of draws just without direct damage there at the end, then potentially the Warrior could have climbed back in. So really important game. Like a Boss, so much riding on this for him, and he is putting himself back in with a shot on the road to BlizzCon.
To be able to put a point on the board, and now this is the stage where DrHippi, maybe not himself, but when you're so far ahead and then your opponent starts fighting back, there's just a hint of worry that, like, please don't reverse sweep me.
Yeah, definitely those doubts can start to creep in, but he has such a powerful deck to be able to pick up one more win with. You know, Dragon Warrior has been an absolute staple. It feels like it hasn't been around all the time, but the reason for that is that it was such a powerhouse, it was banned in every single round of every single opponent in every single tournament, but it was there in everyone's lineup for months and months and months, and the reason for that is that it's an incredibly powerful, oppressive, aggressive, consistent deck, and if you need to pick up one win over 4 games, I'm willing to bet the farm on Dragon Warrior. Yeah,
I completely agree. And even this matchup as we go into the next game here of Warrior versus Druid is, I feel, a bit of a tough one for the Druid because the Warrior can just choose to be so aggressive. And if DrHippi can get an early enough curve out, the Druid cannot just keep up. It's just not possible.
Right. The Dragon Warrior minions are so chunky that basically every single minion you play just demands premium removal from the Druid deck. And eventually they run out of it. So generally, the way that the Druid wins in this matchup is that they get ahead with ramp very, very quickly, or they get a huge swing turn with Arcane Giant and there's no execute in hand. And option A is available to Like a Boss here, who is going to go from Wild Growth into Fandral Staghelm very quickly and then be able to back that up with a Wrath.
Yeah, that's definitely looking good for Like a Boss. Whereas on the other hand, DrHippi has the slightly delayed start.
He does, and Like a Boss actually chose to anticipate a quicker start from DrHippi. Now, normally, coining Wild Growth when you don't have a 3-drop or an Innovate 5-drop in play in your hand is considered fairly unforgivable, but he was anticipating the need to Wrath on his turn 2, so he wanted to get the Wild Growth out of the way so he could Wrath Alexstrasza's champion on turn 2 and then just develop his Fandral freely on turn 3.
Yeah, and you know what? I completely agree. I think that's a completely fair play because, as we mentioned, if the Warrior can starts just curving straight away, then Druid's going to really struggle, and that Wild Growth would have just sat in hand for such an awkward time there.
Like a Boss is playing on point right now. The Tempo Blood Mage on the board. How much health is the minion that Dragon Warrior is going to play on turn 3 going to have?
I'm going to go for a pretty confident 4.
That sounds about right to me. And remember, DrHippi's list, only 1 Ravaging Ghoul, 2 Monkeys, 2 Frothings. So 4 out of 5 times the minion that comes down here is having 4 health and just gets punished straight away by this Wrath, if Like a Boss even wants to go down that line.
Yeah, and DrHippi is definitely sat considering this very heavily here.
I actually like the Fairy Dragon a lot.
Well, would you Blood Taker? Would you Blood Taker as well? Yeah, to clear it off. I feel like anything else, if you do this with Thalnos on the board, you can just get blown out so hard. And Hippie, what a god. He makes the play. So both these players playing extremely well just in the first few turns, very thoughtful of what their opponent's deck is and what the potential outcomes are and how they can fall behind if they don't play around those outcomes.
Yeah, so Fandral comes out here in a pretty solid position, and now the threat at hand for DrHippi. How much does he respect this? I mean, you have to respect Fandral Staghelm, but do you respect it to the levels of Korkron Charge plus Fairy Dragon and trade into it?
Yeah. It's like DrHippi knows what's in Like a Boss's hand, because the Nourish to follow up would have been backbreaking in this game.
Right, if he'd have just dropped the 3/6 Twilight Guardian there, we would have seen Nourish, which would have, of course, drawn 3 cards and gained the mana, and then with that immediate extra mana that you get from the Nourish, he could have wrathed onto the Twilight Guardian and then traded in with the Fair. It would have just been an absolute nightmare, so that is an insane level of respect for a 4-drop to trade your 2-drop and your charging 4-drop of your own into it, but that is the level of respect Fandral commands, and these first 5 turns of this game from both sides have been played at an extremely high level.
Yeah, this is not your average ladder game, I'll tell you that. This is some top-level Hearthstone, and I expect nothing less from players of this caliber.
Yep, so Twilight Guardian comes down, contests the 6 power on the board nicely, and if Likeaßawse wants to make something happen so that these 2/2s don't all trade, then he doesn't really have a development play this turn. He cannot get the Arcane Giant to come out here through abuse of the spells just yet, so it's a pretty low-impact turn here for DrHippi, but he's just going to choose to use his Wrath to consolidate his 2/2s on the board. What do you think about this as opposed to just trading and pushing out an Azure Drake?
Yeah, I like it just because it's less punishable in general. Like, it's very difficult for the warrior to deal with both minions. There's going to be no double ghoul, for example, as we've mentioned previously, and you've already seen a Corcoran as well, so there's not a chance for an immediate value trade. And we also saw a very sort of funky turn from DrHippi on turn 3 to play around the Wrath. So you know there's still all the 4 health minions left in the deck. So if they come out, then you know that you're sort of threatening those with the minions already, and you have a pretty good follow-up with Azure Drake into Wrath next turn, regardless.
I like it, and I like this decision from DrHippi as well. Doesn't feel the need to overreact to these 2/2s just yet. He's just going to continue to try and grab the initiative over and over again, right? He's just going to keep trying it until he runs out of ways to do it, or until it's, irreversible, and then he'll start trying to fight back on board. But he does have to be careful because, as I mentioned, no Deathwing in this list, which means if the board does start to snowball, he does not have that instant reset available to him.
Yeah, and again, we see Likeaßawse just, respecting the fact that he wants to keep these 2 minions alive, the 2 Trents, sorry, and just continue to have multiple trade options on the board. So he didn't even use... I thought he was going to trade 1 and use the Wrath to cycle, but with Nourish in hand and then multiple other options as well going forward, you just don't really need it. You may as well keep the 2/2. And, every single turn played in this game so far is, flawless to the extent of, playing around potential cards in your opponent's hand. It's very impressive.
I agree. The Alexstrasza's champion pickup from DrHippi here enables a pretty strong turn for him if he does want to choose this turn as a way to fight back onto the board, but it would also involve just leaving an Azure Drake up, which is a terrifying proposition, but I just don't see anything superior, so this is what's going to happen unless he was going to double trade into the Azure Drake here. We've seen him respect a powerful minion with charged minions on a previous turn, but this time Azure Drake doesn't quite command the level of respect that Fandral Staghelm does.
And the thing is here, spell power swipe plus normal swipe, it's pretty much the same outcome.
You mean that card?
Yes, that card.
Yeah.
That card Likeaßawse drew to line up perfectly, and he can play the Arcane Giant as well. Likeaßawse literally doing everything right and what he needs to do in this matchup to win it. And DrHippi now, unless he plays Rag and hits the 8/8, is going to fall too far behind.
Yeah, there's no other play. He just has to drop Rag here and just shut his eyes. 33% of the time, he's in a decent position. Taking out the Drake is not terrible as well. Face would just be completely miserable in this situation. And look at Likeaßawse just summoning the Rag shot to his face. That is how you control this game. Likeaßawse just summons the fireball to his hero portrait.
And that's just game.
And that is going to be the game.
Wow, super quick. And the players playing quite fast to a large extent, considering how much we could tell they were playing around and thinking of. But Likeaßawse on the road to coming back and potentially reverse sweeping DrHippi.
Yeah, and you can see he has been, relatively stoic throughout this series. None of the histrionics that we saw in the preliminary so far, but you can see as the stress is ramping up, it's getting there. I'm predicting there is going to be some sort of explosion of emotion one way or the other before this series is through.
Yeah, and we will be continuing with this very hype series soon, so stick around, guys, and don't go anywhere.
talked to me a little bit earlier about sort of your strategy behind emoting.
Yeah. I'm not gonna emote all the game like, yeah, I will hunt you down, I will hunt you down. But I think emotes is there for a reason. The perfect time to emote is like turn 8 to 9 in the turns that your opponents are thinking how I can clear the board, how I can set up lethal, how I can do that. In the crucial time, you need to emote him. Like even 2 to 3 seconds, if they haven't spelled you, they get triggered, you get the upper hand there because you get your time and they might lose the mind and, I don't know, do something that they don't want to. I think that's the perfect time to emote.
So if you buy yourself 4 seconds, if you make them stop and squelch you for 4 seconds, hey, that's 4 seconds that you bought that they
Yeah,
don't
but I
have
think
anymore.
that's good.
Yeah, that's really good, yeah.
So we see, you know, the insight into Likeaßawse's emote strategy. Not something that's discussed too often in Hearthstone, but definitely something considering.
Yeah, I like it, honestly. I think, like it or not, the emote system is a tool that is in the game and is legal. There is no rule against it. Therefore, if you are a competitive player, your job is to use the game mechanics and the rule set that is presented to you and engineer the best possible situation for yourself to defeat your opponent. If that involves annoying them, then sure, that's perfectly legitimate, because the situation that he's describing there with, you know, you time it at a point where you make them go, oh, why is this jerk emoting me right now? And then they're not thinking about their turn. If you do that, if you get distracted, that's your problem. That's not theirs.
Exactly.
You should be focused.
And there's a squelch option.
There is, yeah.
So, you know, there's always that if the players feel they need it. But we are going to get into Game 6. It's going to be DrHippi's Dragon Warrior. 3rd time now versus Likeaßawse's Zoo. So this, again, you know, we were discussing it earlier where the Dragon Warrior feels like a really good lineup here, but this second ghoul that we've mentioned in 2 series now, it feels like a bit of an issue for DrHippi. And also, it's not the fact of not necessarily drawing the second ghoul, but the threat of, or the lack of threat of the ghoul just not being there and Likeaßawse being fully aware because these deck lists are open for the players.
Right. The card that he's probably playing in that slot, if you like, the N'Zoth's First Mate, in this matchup particularly, I have no dispute that N'Zoth's First Mate is great. If you can draw it early, it's a fantastic tool to be able to fight for the board early on. But in so many other matchups, like, I just feel like it's such a low power level card overall in terms of its impact in a game, especially if you don't have it in your hand before turn 3, which is pretty likely. That the second ghoul for me just has a much bigger impact on a lot of games.
Yeah, we see Likeaßawse now getting off to a pretty quick start himself. The Possessed Villager, followed by the Imp Friends. Being able to just go onto the board there, and not really a good response so far from Hippie. He does have the opportunity to coin out a 4-drop next turn. And this is a question he's got to ask himself. Does he want Fairy Dragon now? Or does he want to be able to coin out Twilight Guardian guaranteed as a 3/6 taunt?
Yeah, this is a really awkward draw for DrHippi right now because of that reason. The Twilight Guardian will be huge coming down next turn, but he feels like he has to contest the board right now. He's going to get the bad news that Direwolf Alpha is going to absolutely crush that Fairy Dragon. And this game is already... Yeah, look at that! Like a boss just waves goodbye to his opponent on turn 3 of the Zoo game.
There we go. This is when he's feeling pretty good. And to be honest, with the second Imp coming down there, you know, DrHippi must be terrified now, because if there's any draw, you know, any discard mechanic going to kick in next turn, you see that your wallet's cycling for 2 and not even having to pay life or mana. He's just using a spell he would use regardless, or won't be able to use a minion because of the Doom Guard, but even a Librarian coming down.
Yeah, unbelievable. And I just struggle to see a way back into this game. The N'Zoth's First Mate pickup is a big deal. This is probably just about the last turn where it could have been relevant. So he does fight his way back onto the board just a little bit, but already this board is contested by what he sees, plus the addition of one of the most irritating minions in the game in, you know, early board-focused matchups, the Imp Gang Boss. He is so far behind.
And also,
here.
just that draw for Likeaßawse. Imp Gang Boss was almost always coming down that turn. Yeah. Almost always. Just draws a 1-drop.
Yeah.
Let's just fill the curve out. Who needs life tap? Just draw Doom Guard next turn, it's fine.
That sounds like Zoo 101 to me. Dump your hand, draw a Doom Guard. That is how you win some games of Hearthstone.
Yeah, and now DrHippi does have the Dragon Activator for his Twilight Guardian, which I think is just going to have to be enough. I sort of half considered the Corcoran, but you don't really do it. If you trade into the Gang Boss, then you're only stopping 1 power.
You could Corcoran and trade with the weapon into both of the Malchezaar's imps, which actually gives you the most efficient trades over 2 turns.
Yeah.
Because if you trade into the Imgang boss, like you said, it's only taking 1 power off the board, and then you leave your Corcoran Elite exposed to a 1 damage attack coming back the other way. So I think this is the optimal line from DrHippi, but just not enough. And like a boss, honestly, he could direct this attack in any direction he sees fit in this situation. He's so far ahead.
And when you have that choice, I always like to live the smoke life, to be honest. If there's any direction, I choose face. But, you know, did choose to trade, so be a little bit conservative. And I think the idea for like a boss here is he's just going to say, I'm not going to get too silly. Now, you know, I'm so far ahead. Now I can just live tap going forward. I'll just remove his Corcoran and then build on that. But I feel like even if the Corcoran went into the Flame Imp, then, you know, the Imp Gang Boss is just chilling as a 3/5 anyway. So.
Yep. And I'm sure we'll see the coin being used here, the Twilight Guardian and the Alexstrasza's champion coming down here, just trying to reduce damage as much as he can, but he still just hasn't even been able to get back to board parity yet, let alone fight his way up ahead, and he just doesn't have the life total to play with right now. You know, 1 power card from Likeaßawse is all it's going to take. 1 Doomguard, 1 Soulfire. That will probably be back-breaking, but that is as close to a complete whiff as Zoo can possibly have.
Yeah, this is the chance DrHippi coming back, but he will need a minion of his own or some kind of card draw because the Draconite Crusher is not going to be enough, I feel, this turn. And he gets the Ghoul, which only removes 1 power off the board.
I mean, that's just not enough, right? He gets to armor alongside it, but I think, you know, the winning line here, you know, the 1% of the time you win this game, it starts with playing a 6/6.
And there's 5 damage now available for like a boss, and one of the times you're probably not too fussed about playing the Silverware Golem this turn, just because it's like, yep, I'll just stack the board out and really, really reduce the chances for DrHippi to take this game, as he's now put to 2. And there's just not a lot he can really do about it.
Corcoran Elite, so he can take 4 power off the board, or 3 power off the board with the Direwolf and the Voidwalker. He can then Ravaging Ghoul to reduce another 1, or he can Hero Power to gain another 2. Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
No, this is looking pretty rough to the extent where it looks like a boss has evened it up. I honestly did not see this coming. Did we curse DrHippi by saying, you know, 3 games with Dragon Warrior should be fine?
And I just want to give a quick shout out to the fortitude of a man who is on the brink of elimination in the biggest game of Hearthstone of his life, who still has the guts to wave goodbye to his opponent in turn 3 of a game. That is playing Hearthstone like a boss.
Yeah, nice. So we are going to find out how this crazy series is going to end right after this. So don't go anywhere. We are back with what is going to be the final game of the day.
Sorry, just take a moment to let that image speak for itself. Like, look at that. There you go. Moment taken.
Yeah, there's the moment, Sol. All yours. But yeah, it is going to be Likeaßawse versus DrHippi, the final game of the series. And this has been an emotional one for me. Never mind the players. DrHippi went 3-0 up extremely fast.
Yeah.
And then Likeaßawse has, like you said, just had the fortitude to just come back into the series, and it evened it open. I'll be honest, no matter what happens with this game, you know, his family should be proud of this performance because that is a very difficult thing to do, especially against a player the caliber of DrHippi.
For sure. His family, the Greek community, everyone should be proud of his performance for sure, but it's not over yet. There is still a long road ahead of him. Even if he wins this game, the road is not over.
Yeah. This is the first series for him of this tournament.
But suddenly, the pressure is completely reversed. Even though DrHippi has what is probably now the strongest matchup for his deck that he has remaining, out of the 4 that were available to Likeaßawse, this is the one that's probably the most difficult for him to win. The pressure situation is completely flipped on its head because DrHippi, the players are sat just away to our left a little bit here from where we're sat, and after that Tempo Mage game where he went 3-0 up, DrHippi just turned and smiled at us as if to say, "Yep, I got this." But now, no such thing. He is looking just as concerned about the situation as Likeaßawse is, and this is the kind of start that DrHippi has been dreaming about for the last 3 games. Turn 1 Argent Squire met with Blood to Ica, following up with Fiery War Axe, a choice of 3 drops, Finley Murgleton. This hand has everything.
Yeah, I mean, do you even just Blood to Ica coin Finley here?
Yep.
You have the rest of the curve lined up. Like, why not? And these choices are going to be pretty interesting here. It's going to be the Hunter, Druid, and the Mage. I think the Mage normally feels like the go-to most powerful, especially this early in the game as the most flexible hero power. Hunter is great, midway through the game when you think I'm ahead and I'll use that hero power to close out the game. But did go for the Mage, going to get some good use out of it in this series overall. And this is just horrible for Likeaßawse.
This is savage. There's no choice here for Likeaßawse apart from to go for the Flame Tongue Totem to make the value trade, but he is going to be met with the sad sight from his perspective, from his family's perspective, from the entirety of Greece's perspective. He's going to be met with the sad sight of a Fiery War Axe.
We've all been there. And DrHippi as well, look at the curve, continues. He has Corcoran, so now his turn 4 becomes flexible as to whether he wants to play his second 3-drop or just Corcoran, into a minion trade, or just go aggressive and go face, because one of the strategies as well is if you can be the aggressor against an aggro deck, they're going to struggle a lot of the time.
And that's why this matchup is so good for Dragon Warrior. Not only do they have these incredible early game draws that match up so well against what the aggro shaman is trying to do, but they are so well situated to just flip the switch and put the aggro shaman on the back foot, which is just not a scenario they're prepared to deal with at all.
Yeah, not a chance. And now DrHippi just deciding which 3-drop he wants to play. Or even if he
doesn't have to play a 3-drop this turn,
He can clear, and in clearing, he uses the Blood to Ica, the Mage hero power, and the trade from Finley.
Correct.
And he develops a 2-2, so I wouldn't even mind that. I think that's a pretty reasonable option overall.
I think if you hadn't already seen Flame Tongue Totem come out from your opponent, then that play would be more attractive, because this play that you're making here is a little bit exposed to Flame Tongue Totem. But I think, if there is no buff from your opponent, this play is just, vastly superior. So a little bit of a higher risk line, but, probably very high win rate overall.
And now, which Frothing do I pick? As I feel like whenever you can get a Frothing behind a taunt minion, it's going to be feeling pretty good. You can even clear up the board, buff the Frothing as much as possible, and frankly, this is going to have to draw out a Lava Burst from Likeaßawse, and if he Lava Bursts the Frothing, he doesn't have much room to do much else this turn.
He doesn't. I mean, the Argent Squire is nice. That at least lets him develop a couple of minions alongside this, but not the development turn he's going to be looking for here, and the hits just keep on coming for DrHippi here. There is no sign of this pressure letting up just yet, and life tap, sure, most situations, great hero power to pick up, but the amount of pressure that he's under here, he's only going to be able to life tap so many times before his health total just dwindles away completely.
Yeah, and now Hippie can just play another Frothing, use that super flexible mage hero power to ping off the shield, and then carry on trading and say, have you got a second Lava Burst? Because you're going to need it. This is going all kinds of wrong, and we see Likeaßawse looks extremely tense, and rightly so.
So he's traded in a way that puts, 2 of his minions onto 1 health, but it doesn't matter because, I mean, the Maelstrom Portal has an effect here, but if Maelstrom Portal comes out, you are asking for something pretty spectacular to be able to deal with your Frothing as well.
Yeah,
so
this is just insane. The 1-1 not going to be enough, and It's going to be a 12 damage Quarterfinal. He even has the Korkron to remove the whole board.
Yeah, this is just so tough. I mean, the Korkron pushing through can just go basically anywhere he wants right now.
He can still ping as well.
He can still ping, so just protecting the value of this Frothing Berserker right now.
And also, this Finley's been putting in some work.
It has.
He's put in a full shift.
Oh, this takes me back. The glory of double-figure attack Frothings hitting face against Warlocks. Oh, the good old days, Raven.
We miss them. Maybe one day it'll return. But this is looking extremely rough. The Lightning Bolt is going to help Likeaßawse clear up, but he's at such a health disadvantage now, and we can see DrHippi has Azure Drake to refill, continue with the pressure, continue with the card advantage.
Oh.
Now he even has Grom. So at this moment in time, DrHippi can say, I can wait for turn 10 if I really need to and just ping Grom.
Just keep pinging face. If you want a life tap, buddy, I'm pretty confident I'd win that race just by pinging you over and over again if you're going to keep life tapping to draw cards. If you're not going to keep life tapping to draw cards, you don't have the resources to contest my board. This is looking like a checkmate situation for DrHippi right now. Feral Spirits can stall briefly. It's just not looking like it's going to be enough.
No, there's just too much power. And as you said, 4 turns worth of pings. It just doesn't matter. Yeah. It's like at worst. But, we said earlier when DrHippi had his Dragon Warrior as his last deck, he had, 4 goes with Dragon Warrior?
Yeah.
You're normally extremely confident. And to be fair, it took him the 4th game to get a really, strong opening, being able to really hammer home in the matchup.
Do you know what? If you get to mulligan 4 times with Dragon Warrior, one of those times you're going to hit Blood to Ichor into Fiery War Axe. It's just going to happen. So it took him a while, but DrHippi, the veteran, is going to get to at least progress through this tournament, keep his dream alive of progressing through to his dream match, the rematch against Neyman at BlizzCon.
Now that would be a sight. Be kind of crazy. He does have to finish this matchup though, but it's looking very promising so far. As it continues with the help of the Korkron to just not be enough to really answer Grom.
Yep.
And again, well, if the Rock Biter somehow kills off Grom, or another Lava Burst is drawn, well, guess what? He's just going to ping face and just keep doing it till he dies.
The only frustration for DrHippi over the last few turns here is that his best play has just used all his mana on each turn, so he hasn't been able to just get that clock moving.
And there we go.
Likeaßawse gives it up. The support of his family has got him this far, but in the end, it's the veteran of DrHippi that overcame the situation. And as I said, he is marching onwards to that dream rematch on the BlizzCon stage with Neyman.
Yeah, super strong performance from both players. This is the most tense series of the day, going back and forth so much. We can see in the bracket, DrHippi will actually face this demon tomorrow, along with Jordsey versus I Kill You. So, I don't know. I'm glad it's over now because I need to sit down after that to just calm down.
If I was to pick out 4 of these players that I would like to have seen head off against each other in the top 4, these are the 4 players that I would have picked out. Couldn't be more excited for tomorrow.
And we have the winner, DrHippi, over on the fireside with Frodan.
Thank you very much, Raven and Sottle. Congratulations, DrHippi, on your victory. The first question I want to ask is, how are you feeling? That series was really close and intense. What's going through your head right now?
Що в тебе зараз в голові відбувається? Розкажи нам, будь ласка.
Я уже думал, что я проиграю на войне 4 игры подряд. Как это такое возможно, я даже не знаю. После 3-0. Чувствовал себя не очень после 3-го поражения на войне, но дальше уже все пошло нормально.
Well, after very close call, he didn't think he would win, but once he got to the last game, he realized it's going to happen for him.
Yeah, it was pretty close, and I think people really want to see you bring Freeze Mage, but you chose to bring the Tempo Mage instead. Did at any point you think during the series, oh no, I made a big mistake, I should have brought Freeze Mage?
Ти думав на якусь хвилину, що ти зробив велику помилку та приніс не ту колоду?
Не, даже на момент не задумывался, то, что фризам будет лучше. Задумался насчет воина уже, но это уже совсем другая история.
He didn't think for a second that Freeze Mage would be better. He was thinking that about the Warrior, but then it worked out.
All right, well, congratulations. You're going to day 2, and hopefully we get to see you make a deep run again.